Hello, everyone. Should I get started? Is it up to me or Rebecca? Do you
I'd
want to
say go
start
ahead,
us off?
Joni. Go
Okay,
right ahead.
I deferred to you, so I will follow your lead here on this forum. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our community forum. It feels like it's been a while since we've met, and so I'm really delighted to see you today. I just have a couple of slides to say a few welcoming remarks, and then I'm going to turn it over to Luca and Rebecca for the rest of the meeting, and then we'll turn it over to all of you to provide your input. So thanks for joining, and let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Um, uh, this community forum is something that we wanted to make sure is really inculcated in the work that we're doing with the future of N3C clinical. And it was the community forum, since it started many years ago under the COVID, N3C COVID, has been just really super critical for ensuring that we have a way to discuss um, areas within N3C that we really need the community's input and engagement on. And so this meeting is really to highlight those particular opportunities. And we don't take this this for granted. We really want to make sure that we have a way to engage with you that is a two-way conversation. And so I'm hoping that our technology now, we've changed it a little bit, will allow you to do that. Because it's really with your partnership that we're able to figure out the best next steps going forward and how to do that appropriately with the entire community, so that it is a platform that everybody is proud of and wants to use, and that we're getting very good scientific information out of it to help all of the patients out there that we want to help within our communities. So, so this meeting is really about looking at one of those areas of the code of conduct. And so we're really looking forward to your feedback on that. Just to give you a bit of a background, you can go to the next slide. What we've been doing of late is really focusing a lot on the technical aspects of the program. We've been able to sort of reopen everything now, as you probably know, but we've recently launched the governance aspects around a strategic partners committee, and then of course this particular community forum, and have established the people in this strategic partners committee. And what I hope to do today with the community forum is get your input and feedback on the code of conduct, and then what we'll do is we'll take that to our strategic partners committee for final sort of vetting and then sort of codifying that to put it into place. So that's sort of the goal of today. And we're still working through the aspects around the architectural aspects around N3C, and establishing the sort of ways in which we're able to work with the variety of components that are involved in the architecture of N3C, but in also ensuring that we have the governance to support all of those aspects. Today we have 5 signed DTAs, and also today it's a big day for us because we just received final approval from the NIH and our Office of General Counsel, the final review for our data use agreement. So we're starting to implement that along with the DTAs, and I know that is what has been needed for each of the sites, as well as they're looking at the DTAs. So I'm hoping that will allow us some movement that you'll be hearing about going forward in the next couple of weeks. And then looking ahead even more than that, we're working through piloting some data sharing models, and then really trying to scale up the infrastructure, and then establishing how we can incorporate training and other resources to help the investigators along the way in working with N3C and incorporating some of that work within their broader activities within their research paradigms that people are interested in. So there's a lot going on. One thing I will also say is, in addition to the approval of the DUA from the NIH side today, we have also been working with CMS to get claims data into the enclave, and we have had the technical aspects around that being established and worked through, and it's been finally linked. And so I'm hoping that is now something that we can do a little bit more in terms of finalizing that. Again, we have probably a couple more weeks to go, but we're making a lot of progress on the technical sides to get in there. So I think it's a really good pivot point, because we're getting a little bit more mature in sort of reestablishing the governance structure and these meetings with you all in the community forum. And we're also making a lot of progress on the technical sides too, to expand N3C into the N3C clinical space that we've been working towards. So with that, I think I will pass it along to Luca to take it over from here and talk a little bit more about that. So Luca, over to you.
Thank you very much, Joni, and it's a pleasure to be here today. I'll try to keep this brief and practical. So I come to N3C as a physician and a researcher first, and then as an informaticist. So I think about the system architecture less as technology and more as stewardship. So who can see data, for what purpose, under whose authority, and with what accountability. Next slide, please. To me, the core idea here is a deliberate separation. The place where data are processed is not the place where research happens. So in this picture, reading left to right, institutions contribute data under formal agreements. Linkage is handled separately through the linkage honest broker. And ingestion, quality checks, and harmonization occur in the DI&H environment. And the raw limited data set remains there. So it is not placed in the researcher environment. And a researcher receives data only after an approved data access request, applicable institutional review, and NIH Data Access Committee approval. And even then, the researcher does not receive the full N3C dataset, but only the minimum project-specific subset needed for the approved research question, and in a time-limited workspace. None of the vendors providing the technology for the various system components decides who contributes, who is approved, or what the research purpose is, or what data may leave the platform. And those decisions remain with institutions, NCATS, and the formal DAR and DAC process of data access requests and data access committee process. Every user follows the same pathway, regardless of affiliation, and there is no standing access to the full data set. And row-level data cannot be exported. Only reviewed aggregate results may leave. So my takeaway here is that the protections are layered, and they do not depend on any single platform or organization. And as a researcher, that is exactly the kind of information that I would want to see. So I wanted to make sure that it was highlighted for you guys today. Next, please. So how researchers can prepare. For institutions, the immediate steps are simple. They can identify the officials authorized to support institutional agreements and access approvals, and engage them as early as possible. Then prepare for registration, code of conduct, training, and project-level DAR guidance. And we want this to be very practical. Instructions will be coming soon, and personally, my door is open. These are not abstract questions. They actually affect your institutions, patients, and also the trust placed in all of us. So bring us those difficult questions. We may not always have an immediate answer, but we will always listen and work with you. So thank you so much. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Rebecca.
Thank you, Luca. And I'm very pleased to be here with all of you today and talk a little bit about what we're calling governance of N3C. So governance can sound a little dry, but it's really how we in the government at NIH and at NCATS connect with all of you, connect with our community, and build a community around this really, really exciting and important resource. So next slide, please. Here's just a chart showing some of the groups that we listen to and hear input from in N3C overall. So N3C is part of an NIH and HHS-wide real-world data network. And we hear from the Strategic Partners Committee that Joni mentioned earlier, a group of about 20 representatives of the contributing institution and data user communities. We have all of you in the community forum, and then we also have the steering committee for the CTSA groups. All of these representing research and user and institutional interests that will help us guide N3C towards being a really useful and powerful tool for the research community. And then in the next slide, you can see these highlighted as where the community really has a voice. And I think it's central that the community forum and those of you who have chosen to join today really get represented on this chart, because we want to hear from all of you. Today we'll hear about the code of conduct, but we want to hear your thoughts and ideas about N3C as it evolves and as it adds capabilities and data sources. So then in the next slide, there are some committees and groups that have already been established, were established during the time of N3C COVID, and that we plan to restart. Some of these are referenced in the Code of Conduct that we'll get into, but really focus on specific functions within N3C. So how should data be downloaded? How should findings and publications be shared, and how should data access requests be considered and approved? So as N3C gets stood up in the coming year, you'll hear more about these groups. Next slide, please. And now we get to the main topic for today's discussion, the Community Code of Conduct. I'm really putting front and center that this is not just a user code of conduct, but a community code of conduct. And it's a time for you to also ask us or share with us what you would like to hear and see from NCATS as we move forward in building N3C. So next slide, talking about the process a little bit. And Joni gave us an overview of this in her welcome, but the code of conduct was a really important step in the community building N3C in its early days. And so what we're really doing now is taking that document that all of you helped write and revising it, adding some language around regulatory policy, data, architecture changes, and then bringing it back to you for discussion. And so we'll use the Teams webinar, we'll use the Slido capability that I'll show you in a moment. And then after today's discussion, we will open up the document for your specific comments using a Google Drive with the goal of finalizing it following a 14-day window for comments, and then maintaining it, periodically opening it for additional thoughts and ideas as the platform evolves. So next slide, please. Oh, so here's how you can join us using the Slido tool. You can just take a picture of this QR code or go online in your computer and enter this number. And I'll give you a moment to do that. Next slide, please. And now I'll just go through the information that's in the document. If you have any technical questions or issues accessing, please just put a note into Teams, because we want to make sure you have all this information in front of you. So the first section is the purpose of the Code of Conduct. And this is relatively new and has been updated because we wanted to be very explicit that the purpose of this document is broad. We want all members of the N3C community, users, contributors, government stewards, to be reflected, and we want it to encompass all of the many, many different types of data that are being used, research that is being conducted in the enclave, and the different applications that can follow from that. So it's a very broad and common framework for how N3C can be used. Next slide, please. These aren't new exactly, but they're new in terms of how they've been built into the Code of Conduct. These are really important guiding principles for N3C and its mission and purpose. Obviously, N3C is a partnership, and all of you community members are our trusted collaborators. We trust you to be inclusive, to be transparent, to acknowledge your peers' contributions and honor their contributions through reciprocity and accountability. We need the work to be secure, so security is a guiding principle, and of course, mutual respect. The way that we interact with one another is professional, clear, and respectful. Next slide, please. And then we get to user requirements. So these were actually mostly already in the previous edition of the Code of Conduct, but we've added some specificity here and in a few places a little bit more detail. Of course, you should be using data in the N3C enclave for the research in your data access request, but there are some important rules of the road here in terms of what's appropriate and allowed to do. So you should not identify any individuals or contributors or institutions, populations, or groups. Do not attempt to contact individuals. Confirm that you're not, next slide, please, doing anything that could be close to sharing, downloading, or transferring data out of the enclave. It really has to stay there, and everything must stay confidential. And then, of course, report data access incidents. So sometimes things go wrong, report it to us right away, and continue to comply with all of these after the data access request and the time that you have access to the data is ended. So next slide, please. This section is new, but really has always been part of the spirit of N3C and the Code of Conduct that members of the community should follow all laws and regulations, support a positive and professional experience, protect patient privacy. This is very important. Minimize harm, do not conduct research that is discriminatory or stigmatizing in any way, and uphold scientific integrity through your actions, how you credit the contributions of your colleagues, and producing original work. And then the final slide is just how to report issues that come up and what the consequences of violations of this code of conduct might be, which can include immediate loss of access or suspension from N3C, and other consequences depending on the nature and impact of the violation. So I think that that is just a quick overview. As those of you who've gone carefully through the document have seen, it's quite detailed, so there's a lot more in there. This is just an overview of the different parts and their structures. If you go to the next slide, I think we have our first question. So here is how it is useful to use the Slido tool and give us at NIH a sense of how familiar with the document and its changes were you prior to today's discussion and overview. Give everyone a moment. Okay, so I'm going to say that many of you are very unfamiliar, and there are some pretty knowledgeable members of the community too, and then some who are in between, and that's great because we have plenty of time to go over the elements of the Code of Conduct and help revise it or update it in ways that are meaningful and appropriate to where you are today. So now let's go to the next slide. This is asking, do you think that the code of conduct is going in the right direction? And there's a plurality here that shows that you're confident we're moving in the right direction, but there are many who are not sure. And one reason you might not be sure is because you do not have access to the full document. So I see someone has just pasted that in. Thank you, Lisa. This is just a static PDF version of the document. At a future time, we're going to have, or at the end of the meeting, we'll invite you to actually go in and make comments and see the comments of your peers. But thank you for adding that link. And now moving on to the next slide. Do you think that the code of conduct matches the community needs? So this is important. A lot has changed since N3C was launched. And while some of the language is the same, are we hitting the mark in terms of matching the need? So I'm seeing some fluctuations here. All of this is really just to inform your thoughts and future comments on the document. So if you're not sure, that's great. Go ahead, Joni. Were you unmuting?
I was actually kind of excited to see the I'm not so sure's a little bit more, because it probably means that they're in the midst of reviewing it. And so I think that's good. And now you'll be a little bit more, I hope, kind of a little bit more sort of honed in on some of those areas that you might be looking for that can help us make sure that we're going to hit the mark. So thank you for that. I was just reacting in real time too.
I know, it's so dynamic. What can we do? Okay, and then moving forward, I think now we have some opportunities for more contributions in addition to polls. So here is just a simple prompt. As you look at this code of conduct, in one word, how would you describe it? And give everyone some time to think and add their suggestions. I'm seeing a mix of responses here. Some saw this coming and think it's what they expected, and others need time to think through. And then others have specific things that they feel like need to be added or are missing. So I think I will move us into the next slide, which expands on that a little bit more. So take your time in entering here what you think may not be covered in the document that we have drafted, and kind of based on the previous version, what needs to be considered as we revise it. I'm seeing some good suggestions here. Joni, would you like to weigh in on any of the thoughts that are flashing in front of us, or wait until we go through a few more discussion questions?
Yeah, I'm still evaluating as we go, or kind of taking it all in. Yeah.
That's great.
So maybe give me a little time too.
Well, we still have a lot of time. So this is just a chance for everyone, including us at NIH, to see what's on your mind and what you're kind of putting forward to be considered. And so thank you, everyone who's adding your ideas.
Mhm. So this is some of these aspects are around sort of data use. And so I don't want us to conflate the data use requests with the code of conduct. This is actually for users specifically. So I think part of what we'll need to do is think about sort of what parts are here that are good for the code of conduct and what might be more appropriate for the data use agreement, the data transfer agreements too. So that's something that I think would be helpful to sort of to parse out a little bit more in reading some of these comments. But they're good. These are good things to, even if they don't fit in the code of conduct, they're very helpful to hear and how we can think about them for other aspects of how we provide governance and oversight of the resource. So keep them coming.
Yeah. So first I should have said this earlier, that we're planning to capture all these suggestions and summarize them along with the recording of today's presentation and discussion and the slides. So y'all have a chance to look over what your colleagues have put forward for each of these discussion questions. But so you can keep making your suggestions. We're going to move to the next question. If only one thing about this code of conduct could change before it's finalized, what would you want it to be? What are your highest priority suggestions? I love the request to give time to provide feedback because we are planning to do that and have a forum planned where we can use the Google Drive system that the community has used in the past for submitting really specific comments, but I'll also just reflect on what a lot of the comments here are showing, that there is a certain level of understanding and trust around the users and a certain level of trust around the government stewards, but there may be other parties or those involved. And so I think, look at the document, think about how it could be revised. We're pretty open to, as a community, finding ways to articulate our values and what is appropriate to do with the data and what is not. I don't know, Joni, if you have additional thoughts on
that. Yeah, that's right. I don't have any additional thoughts. Do we have the opportunity for people to come off mute perhaps and say anything, or
Yes.
are we just, okay,
I think we do.
okay. And was this the last one? Or are there other?
Let me just check.
I'm intrigued by the idea of the community members and the platform operators. I think that's something it's an interesting thought that we could consider too.
We can definitely unmute. If we go forward a slide, is there one more question?
And now I've lost, it looks like I don't see previous comments. So now I've lost track of some of the comments. But
thank you, Chris, for answering the question about the controlled access data repositories. So I think this is the last question. The next slide is just kind of summarizing what we're going to do. So, or how we'll move forward in eliciting more detailed feedback. So if you'd like to open it up, or if folks would like to share their thoughts, I think we have plenty of time to do that.
okay. Yeah, so please raise your hand if you have any additional thoughts. Or want to elaborate on something that you were writing in the Slido. Is there a way to go back perhaps to the previous slide? Yeah, Ron, I see Ron. Ron, go ahead, please speak up. If we can unmute Ron.
There I am.
There you are.
All right. Well, thank you. And thank you for this this forum. This has really been terrific. I wonder if you could expand a little bit for us on the data access committee's functions, and primarily who is going to be allowed to make data requests. I don't know if I've seen that in any of the documents. I don't know if you've gotten to that point, but specifically, is it only contributors of data? Will it be only universities and hospitals? Will it be possible for private companies and industry to make requests? Can government agencies make requests? So I think for a lot of us, it would be really nice to clear the air about that.
Yes, thank you, Ron. I want to make sure we have other NCATS folks and maybe Chris Dillon, who has been writing the data transfer agreement and has all of the language around the CADR in that. But at a high level, what I will say is that first of all, the Data Access Committee is made up of federal staff. And that is a requirement for data access committees for federally operated systems. And what we do is, there was another question in here related to other IC partnerships. And so we have partnered with other ICs within the NIH to be a part of the Data Access Committee, and also people from other agencies like CMS is providing claims data. And so they will be part of the Data Access Committee as well. And so that's partly how that will be established. In terms of the people who can access data, it is not just the data contributors. We want to make sure that the community and the brain power behind everybody within the community who has a strong research question can access the repository. Under the CADR policies, I believe they have to be tied to a research organization. And that's where I want Chris to come on and make sure that I'm speaking in the right way for the
Hi,
CADR
Joni, I'm here.
policies. Okay.
Yeah, I actually went
is
ahead
that-
and put in the chat the definition of a data access requester from the CADR policy and guidebook. I can also provide a link to the guidebook in the chat as well. And that stipulates basically the background of the data access requester and who's able to make those data access requests. Those data access requests are approved by an institutional signing official from the institution that employs the data access requester. So there is a check and balance to make sure that those that are requesting the data do have the institution's approval to request and access that data.
And Chris, does that include companies like pharma, for
Yeah.
example? They
Yes.
they have institutional
Yes.
signing officials that can sign off.
Yes. The only limitation around who can access data or who can request data, excuse me, and access the data is around international investigators, and they're limited to the de-identified data set, which is our level 2, and that's all stipulated as well in the CADR policies that I will drop in the chat here momentarily.
Great, thank you. And and it's not just the requestor, but also the requirements in the system to access the data. There's training requirements for human subjects, there's training requirements for security, and there's, you have to have a research question that is relevant to the use of the data transfer agreement, and how people are providing the data. So there has to be a bona fide research question there too. So those are the kinds of things that the Data Access Committee will be evaluating and ensuring are all in line. So
Agreed.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say there's also some back-end verification, credentialing, and authentications of the individuals who are accessing the data. So there is some validation that those individuals are from the institutions, both utilizing technology as well as the institutional signing officials' approval.
Can government researchers access the data?
Yes, they're more than welcome to access the data, but they would come in through the front door, just like every other data access requester would. There is no back door to the data. There is no ability for NIH researchers or any federal government researchers to access the data without submitting a data access request, having it reviewed by the Data Access Committee, and then subsequently high-level information around that data access request being published to our website and being, publicly available.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for answering the question.
No problem.
You got it. Thank you, Ron. Anyone else? Yes, Leslie.
I have a question about what the role is of the various committees and who sits on the committees. The publication committee and some of the other committees you described in your governance structure. Do they don't control access to the data, but they control publication of the results, or what do they control?
Sorry, I was reviewing the screen. Thanks for the question. So the publication committee has not been reestablished as yet, and we're waiting for the the IRB and the data use agreement to be in place. So we're a little bit a ways away from there. But what we plan to do for those other committees is that they will include people from the community. And so they are not required to be federal officials only. So they will be people in the community. So we'll do a call for nominations for people on those committees when that time is closer. And you know what we've done before. I don't know is there anybody on the call who was on the publications committee before? What we'll do again here is update the publication governance structure and determine exactly what kinds of decisions that group will be making in terms of the publication committee. But largely, it's been evaluating things to make sure that there aren't violations of the number of, for example, individual road data. And we have our threshold of anything under 20 would not be able to be published in a publication. We want those data all to be aggregate so that it protects any identifiability or any potential for identifiability. So it's those sorts of things that would be evaluated by the publications committee.
And the
Anybody else? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the publication committee also reviewed the initial IRB written for the research, and the actual research result matched what they said they would study, so that they wouldn't go like, oh, we'll do a study on GLP-1 and then write something about diabetes, etc.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a good point. Exactly. Okay, let's see. What counts as a publication? I think this is something that we could revisit once that committee is stood up again. I see a hand up still.
Unmute. Oh, hi, yeah, this is Charlie from Montclair State University.
Hi, Charlie.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Thanks for the presentation. Obviously, it's a really important topic. I just want to pivot for a second to something, because I was in the last forum and I had kind of asked around data access, and there was some email chains, and no one's really kind of figured out who to link me up with. So I'm wondering if maybe we could sort that out offline. I just wanted to point that out, though.
Wait, so data access, you said?
Yeah, I had sent some emails. I think it was to Dr. Baker, but then I think she was trying to refer me to somebody else. So I just wanted to highlight that because it hasn't been sorted out yet. So.
Oh, thank you. We'll make sure you find the right helper.
Great, thank you so much.
I've
The other
made a
question
note of it. Thank you.
So the other question is kind of linked to the code of conduct, and I was one of the folks who was commenting about Palantir. And I just want to point out that for folks who maybe not be aware in the community, Palantir has a pretty damaged relationship and has some really concerning behaviors with data sharing and other things that are not meeting transparency, accountability, inclusivity, mutual respect, the standards that we're talking about. So I would propose or nominate a committee to be formed of users to help evaluate if Palantir is appropriate contractor moving forward. Thanks.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I hear your concerns, and it's been something that we've discussed quite a bit. You know, I will say that there are Palantir is a very big company, and we've had a consistent relationship with them for the last for N3C, and have not seen those behaviors manifest through that collaboration. But I have seen those concerns as well and understand them, and want to make sure that we do due diligence around that. So would welcome any thoughts related to that, and happy to send me emails directly on that as well.
Thank you.
I see another hand up.
Aloha, this is Chair Sedges. Nice to see you again.
Hi, Jairus. Nice to
Dr.
see
Rutter.
you.
I put a note in the chat, and those of us who work at minority serving institutions and have ties with the community, I think one of the key areas that should be charged to the Publications Committee, and probably we need to ensure that there are Indigenous representatives, would be to make sure that there's no stigmatizing presentations of data in publications. It's easy to do that if people aren't looking for, how they're expressing the information. So it's more of a gotcha or too bad that you have these problems, rather than, here's our need to improve services, something along that line. So anyway, thank you for the opportunity to provide input.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jairus. Appreciate that. And yeah, absolutely. I think these are things that the publication committee can will sort of make sure that those issues are well understood and can be worked through as well. I think that's exactly kind of the value add of these committees and the governance that we have. So I think that's absolutely something that we'll make sure is put into that to that group. That has been done before, and we want to make sure that it's just as strong going into this next cycle of the committees. So thank you very much for your comment.
It's also specifically called out in the Code of Conduct. So please take a look at that section and see if there are ways that we could strengthen it.
Okay, PK. I see a PK hand.
Oh, that's probably me, Rishi Kamleshwaran from Duke University. I just am curious if you have been thinking or have encoded into your code of conduct what the return of results looks like, and what the commitment is to allowing for those to disseminate back to the folks that knowingly or unknowingly contributed to this data asset. And then secondly, what is a commitment to the community, to the open source community, to make sure that the derived knowledge products are fed back to benefit those who are, again, contributing knowingly or unknowingly?
Yeah, thank you so much for your comments. I've been thinking about this quite a bit. We do not have a way to provide results back to patients, and N3C is really not geared to do that. But mainly we don't know who has contributed the data, so we wouldn't have a way to do that. However, I think your point is about returning of results is really important, and is something that I think in the future, thinking about governance, that might be something that we want to think about as a community. Where do we have really good opportunities to provide insights from N3C to a broad community, and how would we go about doing that? So I think that's something that we could consider in the future as another way of contributing as part of the governance of N3C and giving back to the community. So let's keep talking about that.
And just could that involve partnering with the institutions that are collaborators in this to work with them? And then secondly, on that open source contribution, there's going to be a lot of novel insights and others that are generated. What commitment do you have that those do disseminate back down to the open source community and doesn't remain locked in this enclave?
Yeah, I think these are certainly questions that we could continue to work through. And to your first point about the results, yes, we would want to work with institutions about that as well. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I see a hand on MD.
Yes, this is Michael Diamond from Augusta University. I would envision that there may be many situations in which multiple separate distinct investigator groups may be asking the same or similar questions. And so I was wondering whether any of the committees will be looking to see overlap, and if so, how it will be dealt with. Will they all be allowed to request and analyze the same or similar data? Or will the reviewing committee let someone know there's another group that started on this similar question 9 months ago and way ahead of you, so likely that they might beat you to an abstract or to a publication or to dissemination, so that the second group can focus on a alternative yet uninvestigated topic?
Yeah, it's a great question, and part of the name of the National Clinical Cohort Collaborative, that collaborative piece is meant to hopefully engage the community who's working within N3C and accessing data, find each other, and even contribute and collaborate on research questions, even though they didn't come in with the same exact question, but they can find one another within the resource to develop a collaboration that might strengthen the original studies based on that particular question, and or identify areas that might be a little bit independent, but still very relevant to that particular research question. So I'm hoping that all things would be doable in how you're thinking about it as well. And these are aspects that we would want to help the community work through as we get a little bit more mature going forward. Mike, do you have a comment on that as well?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. One of the things is that the DARs that people put in will be publicly available in the enclave, so that if someone did have a project that was 9 months ahead of you, you would actually be able to see that there's some effort in that area going on. But I think the broader issue that I think we need to be cognizant of is a term that the community is starting to refer to as analytic flexibility. And that is when people are given this very same data set and ask a particular question, different groups can come up with different answers. And I think it's important as part of our rigor and reproducibility aspects that we really don't just say that there's only one way this can be done, because I think the methodological approaches for big data are still being worked out to the satisfaction of the community. So I think multiple people asking similar questions with a very large data set like what we will have available in N3C is going to really help us nail down how we really need to begin using this data set most effectively.
Okay, and with that, I don't see any other hands up at the moment, but lots of thumbs up and head nodding, so that's good. Let's see, I'm trying to make sure I'm keeping up with the a question about plans and timelines for sites to resume data contributions to the enclave. Will there be discussions about those activities in upcoming forums? Absolutely. We're getting closer to that. And as I mentioned, we have the data use agreement that's just been finalized. And that was needed for our IRB approvals. And so I think by the time we meet next, we should be in a position to give you more insight onto those timelines. Okay, I don't know if I've missed any questions.
We just had a new one come in. When is the registration process for new accounts? When will that be open?
Oh, okay. Is there someone from the team who can answer that question or point him to a link?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And
Thanks.
that's actually something that, it's a topic that a number of you guys and a number of sites are asking about. So the short version of where we are today, we are dealing with, of course, CADR compliance and DTAs, so data transfer agreements are being executed in multiple partner sites. And the Databricks testing environment is nearing, readiness. And we do expect clinical data availability for later this year. And in terms of registration, we are going to focus on institutional signing officials and binding officials first. So that's the approach that we will take. And everything is technically ready. So the next phase is going to be a milestone.
And Luca, you may want to answer the next question too. Sort of the tools related to Odyssey, like Atlas, Hades, etc. Are those compatible with the environment and able to be used?
Yes, definitely. Yes, and I'm happy to provide more details if you'd like to connect with me. Christoph, I would like to, we can have a discussion on that. More than happy to.
And I see another hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Kara O'Neill from Care San Filippo Foundation. I was wondering, will this platform accept data from, nonprofit patient advocacy group run clinical research platforms, patient registries, that type of information?
I am not sure who best to answer this question, but I'll do it at a high level. Thank you for this question. It's something that we've been thinking quite a bit about. We're working with the Rare Disease Clinical Research Network and hoping that they can help us navigate some of those ideas and what ways those might work best. This resource is an electronic health record real world data resource, so not really a natural history study place or sort of a registry for that. But there might be ways in which there can be connections that are made where that makes sense. And so identifying those and coming up with those would be something that we're interested in pursuing. So stay tuned, and I'd love to talk more about ideas once we have a little bit more maturity in the system where things are able to make those connections a little bit more robustly.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to chime in on that? It's an exciting thought.
Yeah, the one limitation I would say that we do have is that we're not receiving any international data from any international providers.
Yeah.
It's all domestic providers at this point in time.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. Yeah, because many of our rare disease registries or, platforms that we're putting together, obviously, we need to draw from many areas, and just thinking about your publication limitations, the less than 20, again, that will be a limiting factor for rare disease research, as you know.
Yep. Agreed. It's a work in progress that is something that I'm thinking quite a bit about too, and we'll have to keep thinking about it. So we should keep talking.
And in the spirit of work in progress, I think we're at time, Joni. So could you please move to the next slide? This is just thank you, an overview of the next steps. So I'm going to paste into the chat a link for the Google Drive. And this is how you can check out the document, enter your comments, make suggestions to us if you have any difficulty. We're here to help. Thank you for everyone who raised the access questions that you already have highlighted. And this is supposed to be an opportunity for all of us to continue all of these conversations. So thank you very much for coming today, for coming with your questions, your hard questions, and we appreciate you, and we look forward to reading all of your comments. I'll hand it back to you, Joni.
Nothing to add. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you all so
Great day.
much. And I provided some more detail on that answer stuff for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.